Hey everybody. So we've got another couple minutes, but we're just logging in and getting all of our panelists ready. So give us a few and we'll get started. All right. Hey everybody, thanks so much for joining today. We're gonna go ahead and get started, and we're gonna record this too. So just realize that if there's something that you don't want to be read aloud or that you do not want to say aloud while it's being recorded and disseminated to folks, just hold off until afterward and maybe shoot an email to do the follow-up question. But yes, this is all being recorded. We'll send it out to folks who could not make it. And again, thanks for your time. So just to set expectations here for this call, this is about the 19.3 and the 19.c SBIR and STTR cycle. So if you're considering applying for specifically the open topic, which is CS01, and then the direct to phase 2 open topic, which is DCS01, as well as the STTR open topic, right? So 3 topics of discussion. We're going to touch on some of the other things that are in this ecosystem. So when we talk about things like pitch days, which are very closely linked to the open topic phase 1. We're going to talk about things like phase 2 supplemental agreements and strategic phase 2s. All of these are opportunities that are only available to companies that have made it to phase 2 via the open topic. So those all apply in a way that we're giving you context, but they're not necessarily the core focus of this discussion. So as a general construct, I'm going to give just an overview of this special SBIR process, why we do what we do, how it works, what each of the phases is meant to do. And then we're going to pass it off to each of the individual leads for phase 1, the pitch days. We'll discuss phase 2 a little bit. We'll discuss STTR, and then open it up to questions. So the format for asking questions is if you're at a computer, just type it into the Q&A box. We're not even looking at the chat, so don't type any questions there, just in a Q&A. We're going to be answering them in a written format, but we'll go through and read aloud answers as long as we can for 1 hour. And again, we'll have another one of these actually either every week or every 2 weeks. We got to plan out the next one leading up to close of applications. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. And actually, if Matthew Scott or Jared Evans, if you guys are on, I'd like to promote you to panelists so you can actually answer questions. So just go ahead and raise your hands, and then I'll promote you. All right, AFWorks Austin, I've got you promoted. I'm assuming that's Matthew. Awesome. Let's do it. So SBIR. Some of you may have pretty strong understanding of SBIR already, but here's the very high level overview of this program. It's been around since the 80s. It's give or take about $2.8 billion every year across the federal government that must be spent on small businesses. So we define that as 500 employees or less. So actually pretty big on startup scale. And it's meant for research and development. Again, for small businesses only. It's broken up into 3 phases. So phase 1 is typically a feasibility study where you're investigating at kind of an academic level this thing or develop you said you would do in phase 1. And then phase 3 is kind of a misnomer. So it's not actually a phase of the program per se, but it gives you sole source ability and certain protections for your IP that allow you to more easily sell whatever your solution that you created or developed further in phase 1 and phase 2 across the rest of the federal government. So, Congress created this as a way both to spur the development of our economy and new technologies across the U.S., but also to solve real warfighter needs. So in this case, that's what we're trying to do at the Air Force level. So that's the normal program. Just about a year ago, we've made some major changes to this program to make it a little bit easier to execute and to do it on your terms. So in a way that is more friendly to startups and more scalable for us. I've seen a note from Matthew Scott to upgrade. All right, you're good to go, bud. So we did make some changes, and that is what created these special topics, and specifically the open topics that we're going to talk about today. So the open topic paradigm, this is how it goes. To get into phase 1, we need you to show us some kind of commercial traction. So you're saying, look, I'm either selling this commercially already, I've got a broad set of users, I would like to see if the Air Force is also a customer. So when I'm saying commercially here, I'm saying specifically non-defense traction. Or maybe you've got a pilot group of customers that have their hands in the product, they're paying for it, but it's still in a beta. Or even if you have other forms of pseudo traction, so pre-sales, if you have letters of intent from major corporates to use your solution. Essentially, we want to see some form of non-defense tractions before you even get into phase 1. Phase 1 for us is 90 days, and then we're talking SBIR here, is 90 days and $50,000 to perform customer discovery with the Air Force. So there we're saying, you think you know who your customer is in the Air Force, we give you 90 days to actually go find your customer. And if you can do that, and before we spend any more than that 50,000 in those 90 days on you, we want to know that there's actually an operational need for your solution. And that is the purpose of phase 1, to prove that there is that need and to start setting up the pathway for what we call transition. So getting it from I know this is useful to the warfighter to scaled in the field and being sustained in a meaningful way. Right, so we want to have that plan figured out beforehand and have the right stakeholders involved. That occurs during phase 1. The form that we created to capture that interest from your users and your customers inside the Air Force we call it an Air Force Customer Memorandum. If you go to the AFWorks website, which is just afworks.af.mil, that's .mil, you can navigate to a SBIR for Industry page that has all of this information we're going to talk about. There's other recorded videos there, example applications, everything you might need during this application we've tried to put there and make it as straightforward as possible. And that customer memorandum is also there. So please do go to that website and check it out if you haven't already. I'm assuming that you all have because you're registered for this event. But that memorandum captures who is my Air Force customer and who is my Air Force end user. We break those out intentionally. So the end user is whoever is going to operationally benefit from your solution. So they're the one that's sitting at the computer that's operating with your solution. They're flying the aircraft. They're turning the wrench when they're maintaining. They're the nurse that's using your technologies, right? They are operationally benefiting from whatever you're proposing. We want them to attest to the fact that it's actually useful to them. And then there's the Air Force customer, which is not always the same as the user. In fact, in many cases, it's not. That is whoever is responsible for acquiring the solution on behalf of the user. I mean, all of this memorandum that I'm mentioning, it has been built up over the last year based on the things from actual experience we learned that you need to be successful. So having both of those parties represented means that this thing has a likelihood of actually getting to the field and getting used and getting you guys deal flow. So if you can get that signed and you get that memorandum filled out completely, again, you can look at the template on our website, you're eligible for phase 2. And phase 2 is up to 27 months, up to $1.5 million coming from SBIR. for you to actually make the adaptations to your commercial solution or develop upon your commercial solution to make it useful to the Air Force customer you identified in phase 1. So that's what phase 2 is for. And then we mentioned phase 3 already. The reality is the moment you're awarded phase 1, you're eligible for phase 3. So you don't actually have to go through phase 2 first. You're eligible after the moment you're awarded phase 1. So that's kind of the high level. I'll end by saying there is a ton of really incredible commercial technology out there. And to some extent, this is a harvesting effort. We are trying to get the best in breed tech to want to come work with us first, or at least as an early customer, as opposed to waiting until they're a tech giant and then they have the bandwidth to do that. So we've made our processes much, much easier to do so. And we'll talk through that a little bit today. But the idea is that we want to get access to the best tech that's out there. And so we've made this program specifically to do that. But I want to pause there and actually hand it over to, let's do a quick discussion on STTR, because that is a little bit different. It has similar philosophy and spirit as this open SBIR program, but Jared is running that. So Jared, are you on the line yet, or are you still out on the flight line? And if he's not, we can circle back for him. Okay, so then a slight pivot. I want to go a little bit deeper into phase 1 and actually how that overlays with the pitch days. So Ryan, I'm going to pass that over to you.
Yeah, so perfect. So my name is Ryan Helbach. I work for, oh, can you guys hear me? Robin, you guys? You got me, okay. All right, sorry about that. Work for the Air Force, oversee what we call our Air Force venture efforts. So that includes both the open topics that we're talking about here, as well as the Air Force pitch days. As a little bit of background for folks that aren't familiar with the Air Force pitch days, if you've seen the TV show Shark Tank, we're doing a version of that through our Air Force SBIR program. And so what we do is, as Steve mentioned, we bring companies in on a phase 1, and we have those companies do that customer discovery and begin engaging with different Air Force entities. And so once those companies kind of complete their customer discovery and get through their phase 1, we set up pitch days around their application process from phase 1 to phase 2. And so with this cycle, there's a number of what we call focus areas that are tied to the phase 1 applications. And within that, I believe there's 5 different specific focus areas that are tied to pitch days, i.e. organizations will be running these larger events where for your phase 2 application, they'll be hearing your presentation and what you're planning on doing in person. They'll be asking you some questions in person and providing you feedback, all happening real time and in person. And then we'll be making awards on the spot and signing contracts and getting your initial payments for those phase 2s, again, on the spot at those events. In addition to that, those events include also a lot of networking, as well as opportunities to make your presentation, your pitches to other investors beyond just the Air Force. So they're very large events. I encourage you to go out, do a Google search of Air Force Pitch Days. This is something that's really taken off for us in the last couple months, and it's getting a significant amount of senior leadership involvement and emphasis. But as well, it's definitely looking like this is a new way of doing business for the Air Force that will be continuing for quite a while. So I'll pause there. Steve, I guess, do you want me to talk anything more of this?
Yeah, so one thing I do want to confirm, and can you confirm for the group, Ryan, to do a pitch day, do you have to be in phase 1?
Yeah, correct. So what we've done previously is we had the pitch days around just the initial phase 1 topics. One of the challenges we ran into that is just scaling, and one of the big things that we're going through, that I'm sure a lot of you all have gone through, hopefully, is how do you scale in a reasonable manner. And we quickly saw that doing those phase 1 awarding pitch days was not scalable, and so we've gone to the phase 2 pitch days. There is still one event that will be coming up in November, and that's topic number, I believe, 193-02, 25, topic number 25, that's related to the F-35, and they're doing a phase 1 pitch day. But from here on out, everything else will be focused on those phase 2 pitch days, so that transition from phase 1 to phase 2, and that's where we're putting our emphasis.
Okay, that's awesome. And so there's a lot of things that we can talk about here. I'm going to rein us back in. Ryan, that was awesome. Thank you so much. I think it's always good to start with why, and I probably should have, but the reality is this program has been, pretty highly successful so far. And just as some stats, in the last year, we've seen over 2,900 applications, the majority of which are companies who have never worked with the Air Force before. We've moved $240 million, again, in the last year, to 600 companies over the course of 900 contracts with an average award time of about 30 days. And we've also been able to bring in $60 million in outside private funding as a matching mechanism. So we're going to talk through matching a little bit, but all of this is to say that, the old paradigm that the Air Force might be a difficult early customer or difficult period is being reversed by the folks that are on this open topic and these special topic teams. And it's been very successful both for the Air Force and for the companies involved. So I want to really convey that as the why you should care, right? Okay, so I'll rein us in a little bit from what we've already talked about. We talked about the 3 phases of the program. Phase 1 is all about customer discovery. Phase 2 is about actually making the modifications from a technical perspective to better suit your needs for the customer you identify in phase 1. We talked about these pitch days, which there's 8 of them, I believe, right? So there's 8 pitch days that are only available to phase 1 companies. So you got to get into the front door first, which is that phase 1, that SBIR phase 1, and that's Air Force 193-CS01 or CS01 to be eligible for that. We do select a large number. So just for one data point, it's not going to be fixed every time. But in the last round, we selected over 300 companies for that phase 1 to perform that customer discovery. Many of them are going to their own specific pitch days. Right, so they applied and said, this is the focus area to which my technology applies. And so they are going to the specific pitch day that is run by the Air Force organization that cares about that technology. And some of them are not. Some of them simply applied and said, I want to try to find out if there's a customer in the Air Force. I think I know them, but I want to confirm in phase 1. And they go on to a normal phase 2 without a pitch day involved. So phase 1 is the front door. That is how you get to the phase 2 pitch days. That is how you get to the normal phase 2. There is also what is called a direct to phase 2 topic. So I do want to say this is not for everyone. In fact, it's not for the majority. The bar is much higher to get in direct to phase 2 than it is to get into phase 1. There's going to be a much lower number of awards, but it is as the name implies. You can skip that phase 1 3-month process if you already have a very strong customer identified, you've already secured that memorandum that we talked about. Essentially, if you already accomplished on your own that feasibility study, that work that was accomplished or was to be accomplished in phase 1, you can go directly to phase 2. 2 things I want to highlight about direct to phase 2 that are different though. One is you need the Air Force customer memorandum. So if you just have a letter of support or an email or verbal confirmation that your Air Force customer is interested, you cannot apply to direct to phase 2. We won't actually consider your application. So go to the AFWERX website and check out that template, which is live. And then the other thing is, we haven't talked about this yet, but matching funding. So a lot of the way that we structure our program is to align incentives in such a way to give you the best outcome as a company and give the Air Force the best outcome as well. One of the ways we've done that is with the matching funding opportunity. And so we offer 1-to-1 matching when applying for phase 2 and for direct to phase 2 with private investors. And that has to be for some kind of skin in the game investment. So equity, convertible note, save convertible note, anything that is an investor who is getting something other than a return on like a loan. So they're getting some type of equity and skin in the game with you. That can count towards 1-to-1 investment. Now there's a lot of rules over who applies as an investor. So check out section 13 of the CSO, which is the solicitation with the instructions. Section 13 all the way at the bottom talks about how the matching funding works for this. So please do check that out. But in general, that is available. 1-to-1 match up to $1.5 million from us. And there's also a government match. So this is to encourage other government agencies, the ones that at the end of the day are going to be buying your solution after phase 2 is complete. We want them to put skin in the game as well, because that increases the likelihood that your technology does not sit on a shelf and actually goes out to the warfighter to be used, right? So we offer 2-to-1 match for government customers. So this can be another Air Force agency, it can be a program office, it can actually be another federal agency as well. The only requirement is that regardless of where the money is coming from within the federal government, you need an Air Force customer and end user, like we talked about, that are going to be the lead on the phase 2 effort. So we need one cognizant lead who is in charge, and they need to be Air Force, but the money can come from elsewhere in the government. It just can't be SBIR money, right? It can't be someone else's SBIR dollars. And again, we match that at 2-to-1 up to 1.5 million. So as an example, if you had 750,000 from a customer who wants your thing inside the Air Force, we can match at 1.5 million coming from SBIR, who takes you up to $2.25 million total in your contract. So I've just described how matching works. Again, it's aligning incentives. For direct to phase 2, we require matching. So if you're just applying without any matching funding, we won't consider your application for direct to phase 2. So that's an important nuance. I don't want anyone wasting their time if they don't have that matching funding. So either private or government or both, you need that to apply for direct to phase 2. Okay, so I'll pause here again. Jared, are you on yet? I know you had some stuff going, or we can wrap STTR to the end of this after we've done some Q&A if we'd like. Okay, yeah, no issues on that. So what I will say is that STTR, which we're going to touch on at the end, this is the university equivalent of SBIR. So the rules are, I mean, it's a little bit less money that's involved, but also there needs to be some affiliation with a university to be able to be awarded an STTR. But the same ideas are behind it: an abbreviated application process, which I want to touch on that too, a rapid selection time frame, and this whole customer discovery followed by R&D. That mindset is involved with STTR as well. We have noticed that STTR tends to be less mature technology. So if you have something that is affiliated with a university that is not yet commercialized, but it is commercializable, so there's potential there, STTR might be the route for you. And then again, I want to touch on the application process. It is much shorter than your normal SBIR or a lot of other contracts to work with the government. So for phase 1, we just ask for 5 pages of technical volume and a 15-slide pitch deck, which is, that's extremely short. You probably already have 15-slide pitch decks that you show to your investors or similar. We ask that you adapt that to our specific proposal instructions. Again, read through all these instructions. This is just me trying to articulate it for you. Go to the AFWERX website as well. And we have template PowerPoint presentations. We have template 5-page technical volume to make it as easy as possible for you. The direct to phase 2 is a little bit longer necessarily. It's 15 pages, but still 15 slides. We also ask you for a 100-second pitch video, so think Kickstarter. But the idea here is that it's a lot more consumable, and it tends to get shared quite a bit across the Air Force, so it's good marketing for you. And then also there's that memorandum that we talked about. So the requirements are abbreviated, the selection is rapid, and then we've talked ad nauseum through the 3 phases of this program. So I'm gonna go over now and start answering questions. I'm sure there's a lot of them. I see that 24 have been answered so far. And then we'll have a wrap up at the end after about 40 minutes more, where we kind of tie everything with a bow again. And actually, so Matthew and Ryan, anything before we jump into this that I've missed that you want to add on?
No, you're good on our side. You're good.
All right. Thanks, guys. Okay, so here's some questions from Anonymous. How does the SDV OSB self-certification affect the ability to obtain an SBIR grant more effectively? So first, we're going to say we don't award grants for the Air Force SBIR. We award contracts. So the application is fair and open, and the evaluation process is as well. We collect data on specific demographics that apply and are accepted. Right. So that's a big note there, is that these are not grants; they are contracts. Then Pyrolite asks the names. So this is actually, I'm glad you bring that up. Real quick intros around the room. So Steve Lover, for the first 2 cycles, I ran the phase 1 open topic. Now I'm the lead PM for all of the phase 2s. So we have just under 200 folks who have transitioned through this process who are now in phase 2. And I'm leading the PMing for those. And then just in general, we all kind of are a close cohort that develops this process and executes it. Ryan gave a quick intro on him, but he always is too humble. So he's like the CEO of all the special topics. So when you think Air Force Ventures, when you think pitch days, when you think all the SBIR awesomeness that's happening, Ryan is one of the big dogs that's doing that. So we're really lucky to have him on the team. And then Matthew Scott, he's talked a little bit. He might chat and answer. He's probably been answering a lot of the questions already. But he has been running for the last 2 cycles, and now this one, the phase 1 open topic, which last time, there was over 600 applications. There was over 300 awards. So it's a huge cohort, and helping to manage that. How do you do the customer discovery effectively? How do you take into account all of these focus areas, all of these pitch days? That is being run by Matthew Scott in terms of the phase one aspect of this. So really lucky to have him on board. He's down in Austin. And then the guy I keep referencing who's not yet on the line is Jared. He is running the STTR open topic, so he'll be able to speak to that as well. There's other players that aren't on the call. I'm not going to mention one because then I'll feel bad for not mentioning the other ones, and it would take quite a bit. But the team has grown. There's an incredible amount of support for this, and just from the contract officers to finance to legal to program management, the team is really incredible, and you're going to meet all of them throughout the course of this process. Did I miss anything really important on the intros there, Ryan and Matthew?
No, I think you were spot on there.
Spot on, thanks.
Awesome. Okay, and good question. Thanks for pimping us on that. Okay, from Anonymous. If we have ideas on how to improve marketing and operation efforts for AFWorks as a private contractor to benefit the ecosystem, can we apply for a phase one SBIR grant, again, contract, to create a playbook or set of guidelines in phase one, and then apply for a work product in later phases? So we are awarding contracts, not grants, again, to companies that are conducting R&D and have new technologies and solutions that will benefit the Air Force. We cannot make awards for service-only efforts. So that's a really good point, is we aren't awarding for services. We cannot buy design. Now, a lot of times, the way that you are executing whatever it is that you do can be packaged as a platform, right, or a new process that can be productized in some way. So realize that we don't award services, but if what you're doing can be interpreted or can be couched in some way as a product solution, then you might be able to apply. So it's not as black and white, but we cannot do services only. How do you get a SBA, SBC? Is you are just a small biz versus WOSB and 8A. So these are different qualifications that make a business special or easier to award to. So when we talk about 8A and women-owned small business, for example. So again, this is fair and open application process for companies with less than 500 employees. We collect data on specific demographics, but that is not a part of our evaluation criteria. So we are not going to favor 8A, for instance, in this process. It is fair and open for everybody involved. Then reference the SBA SBIR website for further clarifications on that. But that's a good question. Okay, so where and when will the recorded version of the webinar be available? Really great question. So we're going to post this video at afworks.af.mil this week, and we'll explore ways to disseminate the information further as well. So great question. So we talked about SBA already. So from Jorge, can a phase one company get 2 phase 2 contracts for different projects and customers? So this is a great question. So on a phase 2 plan, you can incorporate multiple partners into a consolidated MOU. The underlying technology with your proposal has to be consistent. So what that means here is during the course of phase 1, or even if you're just preparing for direct to phase 2, if you find multiple customers from different organizations who want similar versions of your product, similar enough that you can combine them into a single phase 2, that's fine. But what we ask you to do is have a single consolidated Air Force customer memorandum, which we've talked about quite a bit, that has all of the stakeholders involved, right? So we want to know that at a minimum, both of those parties that are, want to provide funding or want to be a part of the phase 2 are aware of each other and are okay with a mutually agreed upon set of milestones to be accomplished in phase 2. So that can be done. Now, interpreting this question a little bit differently, and I'm glad you bring this up, is you cannot have 2 active open topic phase 2s at the same time. And so if you're a company that already has phase 2, whether you were in 18.2, .3, 19.1, 19.2, and you've made it to phase 2, you cannot apply for another open topic, either phase 1 or phase 2, until you've completed your existing phase 2. And this is, there's a lot of kind of internal dialogue on this, because on one side of this, we want you to be able to keep doing positive work for the Air Force. And if you're doing one good thing, other Air Force customers might want you to keep doing different things, right? Or do different things for them. So on that side, hand, we would want to be able to award again. But on the other side, we want to expand the innovation industrial base. We want new blood. We want new players to come and work with us. And by not allowing you to win repeat phase 2s with the open topic, we're opening up the door for new entrants. And that's really the reason that we ultimately decided no active either phase 1 or phase 2 while you're already on an active phase 2. So That's important. I think that may apply to a couple people on the call. That is different from previous rounds that we've introduced that. Good question. All right, from Aaron. What are the expectations regarding market traction? Is there a minimum amount of sales you expect to see from the applicant? So all levels of traction will be evaluated. Essentially, you need to articulate customer buy-in and demand for your product. Yeah, so Matthew answered that one. That's absolutely correct. I like to be very transparent about the way that we look at traction. And so here it is. Here's how we kind of judge your traction is the best that we can see is that there's broad adoption already. So you've got customers that keep coming back, and realize that in different industries that the numbers change. So, I mean, if you're, for instance, in space, maybe having a single launch under your belt, that's really powerful because it's hard to get your first launch. But for consumer software, maybe having 10,000 users means nothing, right? So it really depends, and that's part of the narrative you need to convey to us. But so kind of subjectively, as objective as we can make it, though, is a broad adoption for your product and they keep coming back. That's great. The step below that we talked about a little bit is you've got pilot adoption. So you've got a small group of users who say, this is valuable. I want this thing, but I need to get my hands on it first. So they're paying for it, they're using it, but it isn't considered broadly adopted yet. And then a step down from that is, again, I mentioned all these forms of pseudo traction. So that is you showing us that there is that demand signal and there is that faith in your product, but you're just not quite there to that broader pilot adoption. So you can show us here pre-sales are valuable, letters of intent by major corporates to use your solution. You can have, or some other good examples here, all the awards that you've won for your product, right? So things that show traction in the market. And also we care about your private investment you've received to some extent. So, if you have a bunch of venture capital that you've raised or some signal from an outside discerning investor that there's something real to your product, that also reflects positively too. So there's different ways to look at the amount of traction that you have. And again, it's going to be different for every industry, so we don't necessarily put a hard number on it. Good question. Okay, from Anonymous. Are there specific technologies that match your roadmap? Relate to wearables or physiological monitoring situational awareness? Yes, but we encourage you to reference the need ID and focus areas. So I'm glad you bring this up. So we talked about focus areas, right? These are broad kind of industry verticals for which we know there's going to be a pitch day of some sort during phase one. So you can see those on the AppWorks website. We just call them focus areas. And then there's need IDs, which we have not talked about yet. And essentially this is how it works. We reached out to all of the airmen in our network. Right? And we said, hey, this SBIR pipeline is a really powerful and streamlined way to get small businesses solving your problems. They can apply if they have any solution. It's completely open. But if you as an airman submit this need to us, so this real operational need that you have, we will post that up on the AppWorks website, and we will post that on the solicitation to all industries, so all small businesses to see. And then when you apply as a company, you can say, oh, by the way, I solved need ID number 25 for enhanced physiological tracking for pilots or whatever that may be, right? So long story short is go to the AppWorks website, check out what we call the need ID list. And that's a numbered list of all these things that airmen have told us they care about and they're looking for solutions for. And that way, when you're selected for phase one, if you reference that need ID, you can be paired up with your customer from the first day. Right, or at least a potential customer to aid in your customer discovery. Now, you are not required to work with that customer. It could be that you talk back and forth, you realize you're not a good fit, and then you move on and keep looking elsewhere. But it's just a way that we can more effectively pair you with customers early on. So check out that list, and then know that any technologies can apply. We're not looking for a particular piece of tech for phase one. Good question. All right, Srividya, for phase one, does the product have to be commercially available, or is beta versions good enough? So again, we talked about this too. So there's different ways of commercial traction. All of them are helpful. Some are better than others. And I would say that beta traction is kind of that good category. It's a little bit below broad adoption, but it's still valuable. Okay. So we've got, you mentioned phase two is over 27 months with 1.5 million. Is this different than direct to phase two? In the direct to phase two docs, they say it's 15 months with 1.6125 million. Could you please explain how and why they are different? So yeah, there's two main timelines. You've got the typical, which is up to 15 months, and the rapid, which is up to 27 months. And this applies to both direct to phase two and the normal phase two. And so what we're saying here is, I'm glad you bring this one up, is if you have what we call rapid, all that means is that there's matching funding. So whether private or government matching is involved, that increases your period of performance to 27 months. If you don't have any matching funding, the most that you can get from us is $500,000 for phase 2. So that is up to 15 months and $500,000. The reason I don't necessarily reference that for direct to phase 2 is, again, because we require matching for direct to phase 2. So there's no 500,000 involved. There's no 15 months at all. For direct to phase 2, it is 1.5 million ceiling, 27 months max, because we require that matching funding, that rapid application. But for the normal phase 2, once you get there, there's two options. Again, there's no matching from outside investors or from other government partners, and that has a ceiling of 15 months and a max amount from SBIR of $500,000. That's a good one. Thank you for bringing that up. Paula says, who is the POC for further questions regarding SBIR phase 1 and phase 2? Yeah, so you're speaking with them. Also look in the CSO instructions, which are posted on the Air Force SBIR website. They will give you a lot of contact information of who you should reach out for what question, right? Sometimes the question is with the SBIR portal itself, in which case there's a specific contact. Sometimes it is with regard to programmatics like we're discussing today, and that's the SBIR@afworks.af.mil. And then sometimes it's things like wide area workflow and payment. So all of those are listed in the instructions. Definitely check those out. All right, from Anonymous, could you touch on direct to phase 2? And if they cover the same focus areas, there's a mention of 2 specific topic indexes in the docs. Are direct to phase 2 limited to these 2 topics? So not limited. It keeps pulling me to the bottom of the page whenever a new question comes up. Yeah, so the point here is the focus areas and the need IDs don't really help you in direct to phase 2 at all, right? That is meant to say, if you're awarded a phase 1, it's either going to guide you to a pitch day during phase 1, or it's going to just pair you with your customer from day 1 for the need ID, right? So that's for phase 1 only. For phase 2, even to get in, or for direct to phase 2, to get in, you need to already have your customer. So you've already got your customer memorandum is filled out if you've made it that far, right? So there's really no need to have a focus area or need ID there. And it can be with any type of industry, any mission area. We don't limit you to only the focus area topics. Okay.
Hey, Steve, you got Ryan here. Do you mind if I just add in a little bit to that?
Yeah, please do.
So if you are applying to the direct to phase 2 and you do feel like it fits in within one of the focus areas, please capture that and include that in your proposal, because the folks that are running and overseeing those focus areas would definitely be interested in seeing your proposal there as well. But again, just as Steve said, those are primarily focused on phase 1 awards.
Okay. Yeah, that's helpful, Ryan. So to clarify, you're saying essentially, even though that's not going to cause them to compete in the pitch day as a direct to phase 2, the folks who are hosting the pitch day do care about knowing that they exist in phase 2?
Correct, and
Okay.
that solution's within the space. So.
Okay, awesome. All right, so from Anonymous, we were one of the finalists for the MDO Challenge and showcased at AFWorks Fusion in July. Are we still eligible to apply for phase 1? Yep, you are welcome to apply for phase 1. No issues there. From David, after awarded a contract at pitch day, do we have a POC who we will report milestones and monthly reports to, etc., based on our phase, gosh, keeps moving down, phase 1 progress? Yes, that is correct. So there will be a POC that you engage with. In general, the way, so that's pitch days, right? It's, when you move to a pitch, so you go into phase 1 in the open topic, you go to a pitch day, you're awarded phase 2. What happens is the phase 2 is now managed by whoever hosted that pitch day. So the PEO, the acquisition organization that hosted the pitch day, is taking your phase 2 and running it. So you're going to have a program manager just as you would with any other topic. Now, the non-pitch day phase 2s, so everyone who didn't go to a pitch day, who chooses to apply for just a normal phase 2, and again, that's the ones that I've been running so far, that is, you have an administrative PM. So you've got a small group of program managers at AFWorks who are just managing things like payment issues, modification requests, expectation management. But you also have what's called a TPOC, or a technical POC. And that's the person from the organization that you identified in your customer memorandum who says, I can operationally benefit from your solution. I want to work with you in phase 2. So you engage with them most closely to deliver your solution and to make the modifications. You engage with AFWorks at an administrative level. So TPOC, and then PM are different for our normal phase 2. Probably more than you asked for there. All right, from D Nash, my company has NSF SBIR phase 1 funding, as well as $500,000 of past federal funding for research and development for our technology, and we currently have beta testers within our target market, but no sales or pre-sales for our technology. Would the SBIR phase 1 funding count as some sort of pseudo traction to be eligible for SBIR phase 1 through AFWorks? So that's a good question. We do look at your other government traction. I would say, just from experience, telling us that you have a phase 1 SBIR already is not going to do much, right? Because what we're trying to avoid is people pointing to, look, here's the past money you paid us for R&D, you should pay us more, and instead saying, here's the traction and adoption of our solution. So I would say the past SBIR is not really going to help you. It's helpful to know that it exists, but I wouldn't say it's going to bump up your commercial traction in any way. That said, you mentioned having beta testers that are unpaid, or that are on an unpaid pilot program, essentially. That is helpful. So I do think of unpaid pilots as that pseudo traction category. So broad adoption, paid pilot adoption, and then all the pseudo traction, that is where I would fit in unpaid pilot programs, because at least it's showing that users are interested to pay their time, right? So that is something. All right, so how are direct to phase 2s evaluated differently than phase 1 and phase 2? So the evaluation criteria for direct to phase 2 are technical, commercialization, and team in that order of priority. So note that for phase 1, it's the same 3 criteria, but the priority is switched. So it starts with technical in phase 1, then it goes team, and then commercialization. Again, direct to phase 2 and phase 2, technical, commercial, team. And that's essentially to say, this is actually a holdover from just the normal SBIR process. Is in phase 1, it's more heavily technical focus, which tends to be like, hey, is your team strong enough to do this technical work? And then once you go into phase 2, it's saying now we're making these adaptations. We want to know that you can commercialize your solution. So they increase the priority of commercial. So I would say in general, we do, though we do prioritize them slightly in that order, we care about all 3 greatly. So communicate very effectively that you've mitigated technical risk. There's a lot of commercial potential and traction for your solution. That you have a strong team, and that you've firmly identified your need, your Air Force need from your customers. And this is a good chance too. When I look at direct to phase 2, at least to give you some insights into what we care about on the technical side. Again, what we are saying is, not necessarily show me a deep scientific exploration of what you're going to do. That's more of a normal SBIR response. We don't want that. What we want you to do is say, by showing us that you have non-defense traction, you've already mitigated the technical risk associated with your solution. So when I think technical, I think all of those tiers of broad, pilot, and pseudo traction, right? When we think commercial, that is, we care about some other things. There is a lot of overlap there, but we also care about, what is the market potential for your solution? Do you have any investment? Again, it's not required, but it helps us to see that other people, whether strategic or venture or angel or whatever, are saying, I see value in your solution, and that you're well capitalized, right? You're likely to be commercially solvent in 2 years, because we want to work with a company that's going to continue to exist and a product line that's going to thrive even without us. Right, so we do care about that. I'll also say the matching funding is considered during your evaluation. So, if you had, for direct to phase 2, if you had $100,000 of matching, that's something. If you had $2 million of matching, that's a bigger thing. And we consider that in the commercial category. So that is important. And then there's that third category of team. And so here we do care about the credentials of your team. But also we say, how well does your team understand your Air Force customers' needs? So there's a little bit of nuance there. Really what that comes down to is your memorandum. So how well is the memorandum filled out? We tried to make the template super straightforward. So if you answer every one of the items that we bring up there in that template, you're going to be solid, I think, for the memorandum. So again, more response than you asked for. There it is. All right, from Donna. For the SBIR open topic direct to phase 2, can you speak about the difference between the rapid and non-rapid path? So SBIR open topic direct to phase 2. Yeah, really good question. So you might have asked this one before we brought this up, but the bottom line is we require matching for direct to phase 2. That's not the case for normal phase 2. So if you go into phase 1 and then you go apply for phase 2, we don't require matching. But for direct to phase 2, so AF 193 CS or DCS 01 rather, we do require it. So there's only the rapid route. There's no traditional route. So disregard for direct to phase 2, the 15 months, the 500,000, that does not apply your shielding is 1.5 million in 27 months, and you can only do rapid for direct to phase 2. From David, do the end users of the published broad topics attend the pitch day? If not, who is in attendance during the pitch day if we accepted a pitch? So the end users of the focus area pitch day will attend. So yes, who is intended to be at these pitch days are both the users and the acquirers. And Ryan's the man, so I see you're about to talk on that. Go ahead.
Yeah, so again, for the pitch days, if you've seen the TV show Shark Tank or American Idol, right, the goal is to have a panel of knowledgeable folks that can take your proposal, ask you questions, and be able to make a decision on that. So predominantly, it's usually the organizations that are running it, which usually are acquisition organizations, and they'll also include some end users as well. So again, the composition of the panels is going to vary between each organization, but the primary focus is on that acquisition and end user.
Awesome. Thanks, man. All right, so David says, if we currently have an MOU from an Air Force end user, should we include that in the proposal, and will that help our submission? So yeah, for phase 1, the question is like, look, if we've got one, do we want to mention that? And the answer is yes. I mean, you can go as far as to have a fully filled out Air Force customer memorandum and still apply for phase 1. In fact, I would encourage it. So the reality is that direct to phase 2 is very competitive. And if you hang your hat, on being selected for direct to phase 2, even if you have a customer memorandum filled out, it's not guaranteed. And if you apply for phase 1, at least you can fall back on the phase 1. So good question. I'm glad you brought that up. From Jack, what if our technology can be applied to 2 focus areas? Do we take the same proposal and submit it twice? So submit it once, but call out both focus areas in your proposal. So just mention them both. Would a non-DoD SBIR Phase 1 award for development of a commercial technology make an entity eligible to submit an application for an Air Force SBIR Phase 1? So let's see, non-DoD SBIR Phase 1. Commercial technology. Yeah, so you're already eligible, right? So are you asking for ineligible? No, so we don't look to see that you've already been awarded some other SBIR before. In fact, again, we value the fact that there's new people here who have never been awarded any before. And so, yeah, no, that's not going to make you eligible or ineligible or anything like that. In terms of, can you have been awarded a SBIR before and apply to this? Yes, right? So you can have been awarded many before. That's fine. The only caveat we had was that you cannot be on an active open topic phase 2 and apply for either phase 1 or direct to phase 2. So from John, what was the document and section that we said for VC matching? So the solicitation instructions, the CSO outline rapid leveraging. And so that's section 13 is the number. So it's like the 3rd page or the 4th page from the bottom of the entire document. All right, from Erica, will you allow a combination of matching funds, government and VC? And if so, do they match 2-to-1 for government and 1-to-1 for VC? Yes. So no matter what, the ceiling is 1.5 million, but you can have combinations of matching to get you there, right? So let's say you have $250,000 coming from the government. We match that at a 2-to-1. That brings your SBIR contribution up to $500,000. If you then had $1 million of private investment, which we matched a 1-to-1, that brings you from $500,000 up to 1.5 million. So yes, you can combine the 2. From David, is the recent Air Force pre-solicitation titled 2019 AFL-CMC/WL Pitch Day Commercial Solutions Opening, solicitation number, and then you list the number, associated with SBIR funding, or is that a separate solicitation? I noticed some of the requirements for that pitch day referenced in 19.2 topics. So the WLCSO is separate from SBIR, but will be occurring at the same event that we will be having the SBIR pitch day. So separate pipeline feeds into the same pitch day. Again from David, in the 19.2 submissions, what was the most common and easily avoidable mistake that got submitted? Oh, this is a good one. And disqualified or thrown out? Yeah, really good question. So DUNS and cage code issues, like this is one of those things where very explicitly in the instructions, we ask you to actually put a screenshot of your SAM's registration to make sure that's all gone through. That is because we've seen that historically drop companies out at the last minute, and we cannot award a contract unless that is done. So if you haven't started, start now. Absolutely start now. And it can take some time. I think the reality is we're overloading the system because there's so many companies applying to work with us. Get it done now. And if it doesn't get done in time, you can apply for the next round, but it just needs to get done early. Other things like getting your company address and name right, they need to match between what is in SAMS.gov and what is in your proposal. So just make sure that you have a lot of attention to detail on the address and the company name, and then that DUNS, Cage and DUNS numbers and code are correct. So that's a big one. Okay, don't wait until the last minute to submit on the SBIR portal. We will not accept, if you go to apply at 7 p.m. on October 23rd, which is 1 hour before it's due. So yeah, blinking red lights. It is due on October 23rd at 8 p.m. Eastern time. If we receive 1 minute after that, it's not going to count. So if you're there at 7 o'clock and the system is bogged down or it goes down for whatever reason, that we're not going to accept that as a reason, and you'll have to wait until next time to apply. So apply early. Don't wait till the last minute. That's another big one.
And if I can add a little bit there, Steve.
Yeah.
So one of the things we see on the evaluation side is the closer to that deadline that proposals get submitted, usually the poorer the proposals are, right? So again, think back to college. If you're waiting to the last minute to do something, you're likely getting a lower grade. So yeah, I will leave it at that.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And there's 2 other very critical things that I want to bring up with that. So again, I love this question. Great question. So one of them is when you're submitting your signed Air Force customer memorandums, we have noticed that if you use the Adobe program to combine PDFs, it will strip the digital signatures, right? And so it will look to us like you're just sending us an unsigned PDF, which means nothing, right? It's like, hey, you could have drafted this thing and claimed that your customer cares, and then you're just leaving the signature off, so we don't know. And that really hurts some of the proposals. So realize that if you combine PDFs, it might strip the signature from the customer MOU. If that happens, then you can just post a picture of it in addition to actually having the text there too. That proves to us that it was signed. The bottom line there is check. So once it's uploaded, check. Do not just assume that it was good, because that could hurt your proposal. The other thing too is if you upload multiple files with the exact same name, this should be self-explanatory, but it happens, it will overwrite the previous files. So you could be like, hey, I had 5 customer memorandums. It only looked like I had 1 in our debrief letter. Why? And the reason is because you've overwritten the ones that you uploaded previously. So that can hurt you as well. And I feel like there's one more actually. It'll come back to me. One thing is don't try to, we've gotten very good at sniffing out when you don't actually have traction. And so don't try to hide the fact that you don't yet have sales, right? If you have other product lines, don't only focus on that. We do want to know what is the revenue resulting from overall your sales of similar products. That's great. But what we really want to see is for the product that you're specifically proposing for this SBIR, especially when it comes to direct to phase 2, we want to know what is the traction for that product. Don't try to hide it or obscure it with the other 2. It just kind of makes us grumpy because we're reading through so many of these things. It makes it harder to figure out. So be very clear about, here's the revenue I have from the product that I am proposing to adapt for the Air Force needs during this SBIR. Be very clear about that. Okay. All right, more questions.
Steve, I know you're rocking it here. Do you want me to jump in and start answering some of the questions as well? Give you a little break.
So I think that's great. And I'm going to have to jump to a call in 9 minutes, but I do think it's valuable to keep going for whoever can stay. So Matthew and Ryan, are you guys able to stay on?
I can stay about probably 10 minutes after the hour. But that's about it.
Yeah, that's about the same as me as well.
Okay, awesome. Well, here, since I'm going to take just a couple more and then I'll drop off for the next one, all right?
Do you mind if I just real quick address the focus areas? So we understand that the focus areas are not on the AFWorks website currently. We'll work to figure out why and get them updated. So everybody, please stand by on that.
Oh, nice. Okay, thank you.
The needs ID will be posted by Friday. It's being scrubbed to make sure the emails and the end users are appropriately placed on there. but I'll check on the focus areas because the focus areas should be on there. It's the needs ID that are not.
Yeah, sorry, I misspoke. Yes, Matthew is correct. I'm wrong. Sorry.
Okay, from Iran again. So in the last cycle, we were told that we have to submit the phase 2 at the next cutoff date, so October 23rd. If we aren't able to get the MOU by this time or the Air Force customer memorandum by this time, will we be able to submit the phase 2 at that next cycle? So yeah, if you miss, so if for whatever reason, again, I'm glad you bring this up. So if for whatever reason you went through phase 1, you were not selected for phase 2 year round, you can apply to the direct to phase 2 for a future round. In fact, we see that a lot. So in 18.2, 18.3, folks would have been through phase 1. They didn't quite get their Air Force customer memorandum. And so they either didn't apply for phase 2 or they applied and were not selected. They can apply for direct to phase 2. Absolutely. One thing I want to foot stomp here is when you're in the SBIR portal and you go to apply for direct to phase 2, make sure that the topic is direct to phase 2. So it's that DCS01. Not the previous topic that you were part of phase 1 for, right? So if you went through 18.3 phase 1, do not apply for 18.3.005 phase 2. We won't even see it. It won't get to us in the system. You apply for the direct to phase 2 topic, regardless of whether or not you've gone through a previous phase 1. So I want to make that super clear. That was kind of sad because some good proposals, we just couldn't evaluate them as a result. All right, this will be the last one, and I'll hand it over to you, Ren. So from Paula, would a DOE SBIR Phase 1 award be considered government funding for the Air Force SBIR Phase 2? So no. So the matching needs to be non-SBIR. And in fact, it needs to occur during a certain window. So I'm glad you bring this one up as well. If you're in phase 1, for anything to apply for matching, it needs to be received either from the day that your phase 1 was awarded through 90 days after your phase 2 is awarded. So there's about a 6-month window or so when we need to receive those funds to be able to execute, or when you need to receive the private investment for it to count. For direct to phase 2, since you're not on a phase 1, we say at any point from pre-release, which we're already in, we're past that. So essentially any point from August 23rd until until 90 days after award of phase 2. Again, it's about a 6-month window. That's when you need to receive the funding. And yeah, SBIR funding does not count towards matching. But awesome. Thank you all so much. I'm going to leave this up so you guys can keep answering questions. I look forward to seeing all the applications coming through. This program is just incredible. You got the best team in the world that's working it. And then Ryan and Matthew, over to you. And if Jared's jumped on, maybe you guys can give him a couple minutes at the end to tap SBIR or tap STTR.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Steve. Definitely appreciate it. Just a quick check. Jared, are you on the line? All right. So I'm just going to pick up where Steve was going and keep answering some questions here. Our commercial sales is important to mention for a direct to phase 2. This is a dual use open technology topic. Please articulate any commercial sales that you have and demand for your product. Again, that's one way that we're looking to buy down some of our risk, especially on the technology side, is if you're already proving it on a commercial marketplace. Is the proposal cover sheet automatically populated when creating the proposal? And that is correct. It is as part of the application process. You'll create that cover sheet as you go through the DoD SBIR application portal. We are only looking for the 19.3 needs and focus areas. We are not looking at previous ones like 19.2 or 19.1. So we are only looking for the needs IDs for 19.3 and needs and focus areas for 19.3. So please only reference those. A question about commercial sales and eligibility requirements. We do not count SBIR funds as commercial sales. The question is also, do non-DoD SBIR phase 1s count towards that requirement? Again, we're looking for verification, whether that be commercial or DoD, that you are proving the technology outside of specifically SBIR. If we're invited to participate in Tech Warrior, should we include that in our proposal? Again, anything that will strengthen your proposal as far as showing buy-in from end users and acquirers is useful. All right, I'm at a TRL, or Technology Readiness Level 4, and I need partnerships within a specific Air Force base in order to scale up. Definitely, this is a open innovation, dual use technology, so you need to articulate how you're going to get commercial traction and customer demand, both internal to the Air Force or external to the Air Force. So again, you need to be able to articulate. This is not kind of the traditional SBIRs where it's very tech and very early focused. We're looking for kind of those more mature technologies in order to move very rapidly. In the keyword sections, what should you be including? Again, you can include kind of a long keywords or short snippets. Please feel free to include both versions. Anything that you think will help you get attention for or get the convey across what you're proposing. Question here, can we propose to both phase 1 and direct to phase 2? You are welcome to put in proposals to both. However, we would likely only award one of the two proposals. You shouldn't be putting in inherently the same proposal for both. Again, if we see something like that, we're likely going to direct you towards the phase 1. Is it possible to have more than one phase 1 or phase 2 simultaneously? Because we have this open topic and we're getting so many proposals in, we have to limit the number of awards that we give to each company. So again, you're welcome to apply to other SBIRs, but we are only awarding one at a time for phase 2s.
Yeah, Ryan, and so I know I lied. I stayed in for a second to answer more written ones. I do want to foot stop. This is partially self-preservation because we get a lot of proposals here. Is again, do not apply for direct to phase 2 unless you have, very clear non-defense traction, and you have a very strong customer memorandum, and you have any kind of matching, right? If you don't check any of those boxes, don't just throw it off to us because it's a lot of time on our end as well. So have a strong application. And then I would say that if you do apply for direct to phase 2, remember also consider applying for that phase 1 as Ryan mentioned. But over, I'm actually out this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. And I will add on to that. We see companies put in multiple proposals, and usually for every additional proposal, it usually gets to be a weaker sell. So my recommendation, our recommendation is put in a very good solid proposal versus trying to do a shotgun approach and trying to put in lots of proposals rather than one good one. If you're utilizing contractors or 1099 employees and not W-2 employees, do we need to list them under team? Again, please include anybody that's on your team that will be assisting the effort, include that in that section. And then as well, you'll need to call out any subcontractors in the cost volume. So again, we keep track of that. And there's specific requirements that you have to follow for phase 1 and phase 2 of the amount of work that the subcontractor can do. We don't want you to be a pass-through. Question about hypersonics as a focus area. So that was part of the 19.2 focus area. You're welcome to put in proposals for hypersonics. Just know that we don't have a specific hypersonic focus area for 19.3. All right. Does dual use technology mean the product needs to be validated in both commercial sectors and military? Or if validation is occurred within the military, utilizing the proposed technology already, will that suffice? Again, we're looking for you to articulate your commercial traction. When we say commercial, that applies both to the private sector as well as the military sector. So we want to see you, how are you validating your technology and your proposed solution? I have a question here about matching, and with regards to the matching, please read through the instructions for the direct to phase 2 and the matching. We do a pretty good job of trying to lay out the differences for those. Question about pitch days, and if accepted or proposing to a phase 2 or a pitch day, well, you need to have something specific to receive the government purchase credit card. Again, we cover that with companies as they go through their pitch day. There are several commercial tools that are out there, including Square Reader and QuickBook, that have been used very successfully in past events. Question about the cost volume for SBIR phase 1s. For SBIR phase 1s, we do not go above 50K for awards, so don't put in a proposal that's above 50K. We won't be able to consider those proposals that go above that. A question about STTRs and the requirements for university participation. Encourage you to go out to the SBA SBIR Sitter website, as well as reading the DoD STTR instructions. There are some specific requirements that are out there with regards to STTR and the involvement of universities. So please read through those. Those will be the final guidance for you. Do labor costs include paying the principal investigator, owner of the company, for the work rendered? Again, yes, that should be something that you include in your cost volume under labor costs. There's a question about the application templates and slide templates that we have on the AppWorks website. Those templates that we have on that AppWorks website are exactly that. They're just templates. They're examples. You can put in your own format, and we encourage you to use your best judgment of what you think best conveys what you're trying to do and what you're trying to achieve. So. Question about once you're on a phase 1, we have you do customer discovery. And so one of the things that we want to help facilitate with that customer discovery is making sure you get connections with potential customers within the Air Force. So we do a number of efforts, both virtual and in-person events and opportunities for you to do that customer discovery and for us to help make those connections. So again, we try and set up and facilitate a number of events. As I mentioned previously, if you go out and look at the AppWorks SBIR website, you can see a template of a suggested what you should include in your proposal slides. There's a question here about matching and what documentation is needed in order to capture that matching, specifically on the private side. Encourage you to look at the solicitation. We outline the requirements, so please reference that. But largely, we're looking for a letter signed by that investor stating that the intention to invest that money in your company for a phase 2 award. So if you're doing the rapid phase 2, that would be the pathway there. All right, I'm going to answer, just look through real quick here, 2 or 3 more. I'm going to have to jump off the line here. Matthew, I don't know, are you able to stay on any longer? It sounded like you had to jump off.
Yeah, I have to jump off too, so whenever you do, let's just end the call. I'm still answering questions too online.
Okay, yeah, so in fact, I think I'll just call it here. We will post the recordings of this on our website, as well as I think we'll try and put the transcripts up there. So encourage you to check out our website. Give us a few days here to get it posted and everything set up. So we're definitely excited, looking forward to receiving your proposals. We're excited that you're interested in working with the Air Force. We are trying to do a number of things to be much more responsive and provide lower barriers and hopefully a little less confusing way to engage with the government. So again, thank you for all your time today. Definitely appreciate it. Encourage you to check back on the AFWorks website as we post this video. Matthew, any final thoughts?
Yes, everybody, I would just say, please err to whatever is in the solicitation. When in doubt, just do what the solicitation says to keep you on track. Thank you. That's all.
Perfect. All right. With that, I think we'll end this. So definitely appreciate everybody's time. Thank you very much.